A warm welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. 5 people killed after 2 suicide bombers attack headquarters of the paramilitary force in Pakistan. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says giving territory to Russia is the main problem, following talks on the US-backed peace plan. Plus, Nigerian ambassadors Keshi and Okonga addressed the U.S. House Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs hearing on Nigeria. Let's begin The World Today. Thanks again for joining us. Authorities in Pakistan have described this morning's suicide bomb attack on the Federal Constabulary's headquarters in Peshawar as a foiled terrorist plot. 2 suicide bombers detonated their devices, killing 3 security officials and wounding at least 12 people. Pakistan's Federal Constabulary, previously known as the Frontier Constabulary, is responsible for handling situations beyond the capabilities of the police force, including tribal incursions and criminal gang violence. The area has been cordoned off and rescue teams have been at the scene of the attack. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the perpetrators should be identified as soon as possible and brought to justice. It is the second major attack in weeks, the first being outside a court in Islamabad. 12 people were killed in that attack and at least 27 others injured. No group has yet claimed responsibility for this morning's attack. From there to Lebanon, where Israeli forces carried out an airstrike over the weekend targeting a residential building in the capital Beirut, said to have been used by a senior Hezbollah official. News outlets in Lebanon reported casualties and significant damage from enemy aircraft targeting the southern Beirut suburb. The health ministry says 1 person was killed and 28 others injured in the strike. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said he authorized the operation following recommendations from Defense Minister Israel Katz and IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir. While the military did not identify the target, Netanyahu's office referred to him as Hezbollah's Chief of Staff, and media reports named him as Abu Ali al-Tabatabai, described as the group's second in command. Well, following talks this weekend between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Geneva over President Trump's 28-point peace plan, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says giving Russia Ukrainian territory will be the main problem with accepting the plan towards ending the Russia-Ukraine war. His message followed a video message played back to a Swedish conference. President Zelensky had said his Russian counterpart wants legal recognition to what he's stolen. He later insisted the borders cannot be changed by force. European leaders have criticized the 28-point peace plan following its emergence last week, saying it was too favorable to Russia. The U.S. says revisions and clarifications were made to the plan in Geneva.
All right, we had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress, even from the last time I spoke to you, and I apologize for keeping you waiting, but there was more work to be done. You know, we began almost 3 weeks ago with a foundational document that we socialized and ran by both sides, and with input from both sides. And one of the things that happens when you've been involved in this now for 10 months is you get a pretty good sense of what the priorities and the red lines and the important issues are for both sides. And so that allowed us to create a foundational document, which has been an ongoing working document. In fact, over the last 96 hours or more, there's been extensive engagement with the Ukrainian side, including our Secretary of the Army and others, being on the ground in Kyiv, meeting with relevant stakeholders across the Ukrainian political spectrum in the legislative branch and the executive branch and the military and others to further sort of narrow these points. We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take 28 points, 26 points, depending on which version as it continued to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way. Now, obviously, like any final agreement, they'll have to be agreed upon by the presidents, and there are a couple issues that we need to continue to work on. But I think the report today is that I think today was worthwhile. It was very, very, it is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue.
We have very good progress, and we are moving forward to the just and lasting peace. Ukrainian people deserve and want this peace more than any more anyone in this planet. We thank our big friends, United States and personal President Trump and his team to their commitment to bring this peace. And we will continue to work today, as Secretary said. We will be working and in coming days to join proposals, and we will also will engage our European friends. And of course, the final words will be of our leaders, of the President of the United States and Ukraine. And I hope that we can achieve the good progress today.
Here in Nigeria, the presidency has confirmed the U.S. government affirmed its readiness to deepen cooperation with Nigeria, including the provision of enhanced intelligence support, defense equipment, and articles to reinforce ongoing operations against terrorists and violent extremist groups in the country. It's the outcome of discussions and engagements held last week between a high-level Nigerian delegation and U.S. officials aimed at strengthening security partnerships between the two countries. The meeting held after the U.S. House Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs held a hearing on President Trump's redesignation of Nigeria, a country of particular concern. It comes just as the Catholic Church and the Christian Association of Nigeria confirmed that 50 of the more than 300 students abducted from a Catholic school in Niger State last week escaped and have been reunited with their families. CAN chairman Bulus Yohana confirmed the development in a statement over the weekend. He said the pupils escaped on Friday and on Saturday. An inquiry state 38 members of the congregation abducted by bandits at Christ Apostolic Church in Iruku have regained their freedom after days in captivity. That announcement was made by the state governor Abdurrahman Abdurrazak in a statement. He attributed the victims' release to President Bola Tinubu. As insurgency continues to rise across Nigeria, former CARIAT diplomats Ambassador Joe Keshi and Ambassador Adenike Usonga have called on the federal government to act swiftly to address the worsening security situation. Referencing statements made by President Bola Tinubu in 2014, Ambassador Keshi said the nation should hold the president accountable, stressing that it is time for him to live up to his own words regarding national security and leadership responsibility. The diplomats made these remarks on our Foreign Affairs program, Diplomatic Channel.
When you see the way these criminals have proceeded, anytime I see a state governor dancing and negotiating with them, I just wonder what has happened to our rules, what happened to our laws. There is no law in this country that says you should negotiate with criminals or with terrorists. No matter what the reason for the terrorism is, you catch them and you discipline them. You try them and you jail them, and if they kill people, you sentence them to either death or life imprisonment. You've just seen one. This guy was just convicted, I don't know, last week or so, for terrorism. And, you know, if that rule with which they judged, what's his name now?
Nnamdi Kanu.
The hip-hop guy. Why haven't we used it for these other ones that have even preceded that one? I don't understand. I see some state governors, especially in the northwestern part, you see terrorists or bandits with their sticks, they'll be dancing, they'll say, oh, they have now resolved the issue, no more problem, within 2 months. And it is because they know they can get away with it. Those who shall have summoned the courage to actually pursue them and make sure that this thing is actually put a stop to. They have not done so.
Take your mind back to, to the hearing. You will hear the kind of language or adjectives that were used to describe, the Nigerian situation. Incompetent. In other words, these criminals or whoever they are perpetrating this crime, and nobody, cares to persecute them. And as a result, they are emboldened. But we can also not rule out politics. Right. Because just before, we started, I just was reading the various statements made by President Tinubu in 2014 and 2015. It is very instructive, and I think Nigerians should go back and read that if President Tinubu himself can recall all the statements he made in 2014 and 2015, how he described Jonathan as clueless and then called for military action against the bandits. I think the time has come for the president himself to live up to what he said a couple of years ago and take military action against these people for the simple reason that that hearing really did not portray us well. Describing our institutions as weak, describing our government as, describing Nigeria as irresponsible, describing us as incompetent. Come on, if you are really a Nigerian, you should feel sorry for this country when you hear foreigners, and some of them relatively young fellows in Congress.
You can watch the full interview with Ambassador Keshi and Ambassador Adenike Ukonga, who were guests in our Foreign Affairs program, Diplomatic Channel. It airs tonight at 8:30 in the UK on Channel 515 and here on the DSTV platform and on Channel 420 at 11:30. At the just concluded 2025 G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, President Bola Tinubu, who was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, underscored that Africa's critical minerals hold the key to the continent's industrial transformation. Our correspondent Innocent Samosa has more on this.
Of the G20 member states and invited countries.
The G20 South Africa Summit Leaders Declaration reaffirmed its commitment to helping low and middle-income countries address debt vulnerabilities in a comprehensive and systemic way.
When we began our presidency, we pledged to mobilize the G20 to strengthen disaster resilience and response. Climate-induced natural disasters spare no country. Disasters know no borders, but their toll is heaviest on those without the means to recover and to rebuild.
Meanwhile, Nigeria has endorsed the G20 Ministerial Declaration on Debt Sustainability.
The current multilateral framework do not adequately reflect the realities of today's world. Many developing nations continue to face systematic barriers to economic growth, trade, and financial inclusivity. For trade to be truly inclusive, the G20 must take bold steps towards reforming the international financial architecture and global institutions.
The president of the U.S.-Cuba Trade and Economic Council says President Donald Trump made a mistake by skipping the G20 summit in Johannesburg.
It was a mistake for him not to be here because, yes, a president of the United States absorbs a lot of oxygen and gravity wherever they go. But if you're not in the room, you're not able to influence. And so he's watching from Washington, and the G20 happened. And one reason it was consequential, and it's because of the unknowns, and that is President Trump releases a 28-point Russia-Ukraine plan. Yesterday, the leaders that were here were able to get together, the European Union leaders, President Erdogan, they were able to get together and say, how do we respond to this?
I think that Trump has got an agenda. He has been busy with the campaign. He knows that what he's saying about South Africa is untrue. You can't have a massive State Department that has billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of employees, embassies all over the world. In South Africa, they have 3 embassies.
The German ambassador to South Africa, Andreas Patschke, underscored the importance of cooperation.
There's a lot of tension, but I think the main message is a message of cooperation. So we need to cooperate to solve our international problems, and we want to cooperate.
No matter what the U.S. attitude is, China will still be firmly standing with South Africa and the rest of the global South country.
The G20 leaders have adopted the declaration. Now the question remains, what's going to happen to continuity, given the fact that a big chunk of that declaration speaks about climate financing, and we know that America is not for climate financing. We do know, again, that America and South Africa will be part of the G20 troika that conversation around climate financing will be key in next year's G20.
From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simosa at the G20 Leaders Summit, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the world today, the Christmas cheer already spreading in parts of the world. The city of Bethlehem in Spain draws you in with Christmas nights displays. Stay with us. The new climate change deal means different things to different countries, groups, regions, and geopolitical zones. While it does not provide the adequate finance developing countries need to cope with the impacts of climate change, it does provide a just transition action mechanism, which is a recognition that the global move away from fossil fuels will not abandon workers and frontline communities. Our correspondent Ayola Kasim reports.
Overcoming many setbacks, first the uncomfortable heat in the conference venue, then the security breach by the indigenous people into the restricted zone. This prompted a tightened security at COP30 and the fire that ended activities at the pavilions a day earlier than scheduled. The COP finally presents the world with the Brazilian concept of mutirão, the concept of a joint effort working together. For about 3 weeks, Belém was buzzing. First, the Leaders Summit, where the Brazilian president declared that this is the cup of truth.
That I deeply regret.
The truth that comes out of COP30 is that Belém has left the world divided. But analysts believe this spurred momentum on key issues that will continue beyond the conference. COP30 was meant to be an implementation COP, that is according to the COP presidency. Negotiators were expected to pin down tools, indicators, and processes to turn aspirations into action.
Phase out fossil fuels.
88 countries pushed for a roadmap for a just transition away from fossil fuels in the final deal. This group wants a just, equitable, and fully financed transition away from fossil fuels, reflected in the text. This is where the use of language matters in the text. It is an essential response to the ambition gap. They did not get what they want. They made their feelings known during the closing plenary.
This is not a statement that we're asking to be put on the report. It's an objection.
For civil society groups, the Just Transition Mechanism stands as the major achievement of COP30. The Just Transition Mechanism, popularly known as the Belém Action Mechanism, or BAM, opens what is described as promising discussions on support for just transition pathways. That is a clear reference to additional grant-based finance and recognition of the barriers that prevent just transition efforts.
Ensuring that national structure, economic reality are also respected.
But it is a different case for adaptation finance. The obligations of developed countries to provide finance was lacking, and pushing the timelines to deliver the tripling of finance to 2035 is said to be a betrayal of vulnerable and impacted communities in the global south.
This is not technical. This is about our survival.
In all, everyone has something to cheer or complain about in this deal, which brings attention to the COP process, because it is a multilateral process and there needs to be a consensus. Some say it gives incentives for lobbyists to stall the process. So the civil society groups are calling for more accountability, transparency, concrete outcomes, and not just what they describe as a cycle of dialogues, roadmaps, and reports in the process. From Belém, Brazil, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
On the second week of the World Climate Conference in Brazil, participants had hoped to move closer to an agreement. The DW's Lars Holter joins us now to give us an idea of what was going on with the German delegation. Lars, great to see you as always. What's the mood in the German delegation at the conference?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd say the German delegation is eager to move on with some big decisions. And from what I'm hearing, Brazil's main idea for this conference seems to be having an effect, because Brazil chose to host the World Climate Conference not in Rio or in Sao Paulo or even in the capital there of Brasilia. Now, these places would have certainly had the infrastructure, but Brazil chose to host the summit in the port city of Belém, and that's a gateway to the Amazon rainforest, a place where fishing is a major industry, where fruit is grown and exported, and well, obviously where the Amazon, the Earth's lung, can be experienced, and that is exactly what the German delegation and Germany's Environmental Secretary Carsten Schneider did this past weekend. Actually, he ventured deep into the rainforest and came back shocked. He said he saw destruction at a level he had not been expecting, and that, I guess, was exactly the plan. And apparently Schneider, leading the German delegation, feels that it is more important than ever to really make headway in terms of protecting the climate and the environment.
So, Lars, what exactly was on the agenda in Belém, and what did Germany bring to the table?
Well, the main focus is on cutting down on fossil fuels, getting out of oil, gas and coal, and speeding up the development of renewable energies. Now, Germany is all aboard, of course, has obviously been going in that direction for years and has long established solar and wind as major energy sources at home. However, development of renewables isn't fast enough, and sadly, just last week, the German government even decided to build 8 new gas power plants to generate the energy the country's economy here so desperately needs. But, like I said, the commitment is clear. Germany has now promised an additional 60 million euros to help protect people in vulnerable countries, and Germany is so far the biggest donor of such funds, and that is on top of $6 billion the country has generally spent in recent years on financing the fight against climate change.
So I know the conference is over, but how optimistic should we be that this will lead to real change this time?
Well, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, of course, and especially really what makes it into the agreement. In the past, of course, we know that more promises have been made than kept. This is obviously, as I said, supposed to change now. And as we're heading into these last days of the conference, people in attendance are saying that in the past, roadmaps were drawn up, and now it's about really making the changes planned. But one member of the German delegation is representing Greenpeace Germany. He's told us that there are also 1,600 oil, gas and coal lobbyists at the meeting. Now, they're representing an industry making $3 billion a day. That's very powerful companies with very little interest in changing much. Other than that, there are representatives of the poor countries, of countries already threatened by climate change. And there's the industrialized nations trying to undo the damage they've done over decades without risking, of course, their economic future. So it's really unclear what's exactly developing over the next couple of days. And of course, there's also the factor that the US is not represented in that conference at all. So will we see any form of agreement and decisive action? It's certainly still doubtful, but there's always hope, including, like I said, with the German delegation.
Well, Lars, thank you so much, always being there for us and giving us up-to-date reporting on what's going on with the German government and the delegation at Belém. Thanks again. As we end the world today, cities around the world are already getting into the Christmas season as they put up beautiful displays with Christmas lights, such as these. In the Spanish capital, Barcelona, thousands of people attended the official switch-on ceremony in Passeig de Gràcia Street. It was led by Mayor of Barcelona, Jaume Collboni, and the Mayor of Bethlehem in the West Bank, Nicola Sanawati. It featured a stunning aerial performance by trapeze artists and inspiring rendition of a carol by a choir, and of course, they're the breathtaking fireworks for 25 minutes straight. Attendees enjoyed the show, took lots of pictures in the brightly decorated installations. Well, if we were there that night, we'd have seen lots of fireworks and brought you those pictures. But thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.